Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli, and I'm delighted to be broadcasting with my dear friend, Steve Elkins. He's a nurse in the ICU, a nurse in the ER, and we're going to be talking about experiences. We're going to be talking about risky behavior, how it's infiltrated our lives everywhere we go, and what you need to know about it. Welcome, Steve.
Hello, Vincent. How are you today?
Very well, very well.
Good. Very good.
So Steve, I was thinking, risky behavior. And I mentioned to you that I would like to talk about that, about a week ago.
Sure.
And I see it everywhere. And when I say risky behavior, I'm talking about people who do things that are just, to me, there's no need to do it. Many circumstances, I think it's just plain old dumb. Let me give you just one example. So the gal and guy go to this lookout point, and it's real high up in the air, and at the edge is this steep drop, but they've got to get that selfie. They got to get the one where they are right on the edge, and they take that picture, and over they go and die. Yep. You've heard those stories, right?
Oh, yeah, over the Yosemite. Many of them last year. I think there were 6 or 7 last year, the same thing. Getting a little too close. I think even the Grand Canyon had a few. Yeah, happens quite often. You got to get that perfect selfie, and over the edge. Pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, to me, it's beyond stupid. I was thinking about yesterday, Independence Day, which has the name, I guess I'm not calling it by the right thing. I should be calling it the 4th of July, because everywhere I look, it's called the 4th of July. So we're celebrating the day, number 4, in the month of July every year. So when people say, hey, have a happy 4th of July, so I guess we should start saying to people, hey, have a wonderful 25th of December.
Well, Vince, I don't even celebrate it. I don't hardly even recognize it, because we aren't a free people any longer. We haven't been free for a long time. And I don't really know what we're celebrating. Maybe the freedoms that we can eat as many hot dogs as we want, drink as much beer as we want, and looking up at the sky and watching the fireworks, going ooh and ah, doesn't make me feel like a free man. Since 9/11, 2001, we have lost a lot of freedoms, and I don't even celebrate. Like I said, if I were to fly an American flag, I would be flying it upside down, showing a nation in distress, and this nation is in distress. Hey, I got one for you. Last week we were talking about the IQ, remember, or the flip-flops?
Yeah.
Risky behavior. Own little list. I got my own little list here I wanted to throw by in. Sure. And your listeners might like it. Subtracting 10 points from the IQ for every one of these violations here. And I was walking around in Walmart. It seems like the perfect place to find people that have low IQs. But if I didn't have to save some money and be frugal like I am, and I'm a cost-conscious person, but I've noticed the baseball hats turned around. You get some points deducted for that, turned around, kind of like a gangbanger thing. The pants with no belt showing, exposing your underwear, you lose another 10 for that one. The tattoos and body piercings, another 10 piercings. And a new one here I just added because I saw the insanity. Every 4th of July they talk about this, and it is such a big thing. It's so important, but they got to discuss it. This guy out of California, Sacramento, goes by the name of Joey Jaws Chestnut, who consumed 71 hot dogs in 10 minutes. I don't know anybody who was insane enough to put 71 hot dogs in their body at one time in 10 minutes deserves to be on that list of minus 10 for the IQ. So we're looking at 30 to 40 IQs out there, a lot of them.
I agree with everything that's on your list.
Yeah.
And of course,
another one and talk about here, insanity. You talk about the pictures. Just the other day, get this here, a guy on a dare ate a gecko and died of salmonella poisoning. Now, this little gecko there, eat that gecko and I'll give you $10. The guy eats the gecko, a live gecko, kills it, eats it, dies of salmonella poisoning. I mean, there's another guy that should be on our list of minus 10, but I just hope we didn't spend too much money trying to keep this guy alive. I mean, that's plain stupidity, and we need not to waste our money on stupid people.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Now, let me share a story. I mentioned it probably twice on the air before, but Doomsday Preppers. I was introduced to Doomsday Preppers by our dear friend John Statmiller.
Uh-huh.
He said, "Hey, Vinny, you got to see this. You got to see the show." And so we're in his living room, and this was many years ago. So I was watching, because we don't have television, I was watching for the first time Doomsday Preppers, and I was watching these stupid people, and I mean stupid people. Smoke was coming out of my ears. And when I got back to Missouri from Texas, I called Washington, D.C., I called National Geographic, and I said, I'd like to talk to the producer of Doomsday Preppers, and they didn't know what I was talking about. So I explained Doomsday Preppers, you have this TV show, and they still didn't know what I was talking about. Eventually, I was transferred to a person who knew what I was talking about. And that person said, "Oh, yeah, Doomsday Preppers, that's Sharp Entertainment, SHARP, Entertainment, out of New York." So Doomsday Preppers was not National Geographic, but it was shown on National Geographic, produced by a company called Sharp Entertainment. So I talked to them, and I talked to the casting director, and I said, I don't know anybody who's preparedness-minded, who behaves the way you display them on your television show. So I invited Doomsday Preppers to come to the Get Prepared Expo, which they sent their casting director 3 times. And she's been on the air with me. Her name is Brooklyn Bagwell. Well, I introduced her to 2 of our instructors, Franco Molea and Alan Busick. And they were on Doomsday Preppers showing aquaponics. And the aquaponics segment that they did was, these 2 guys are from the Midwest, and they raise fish, and they raise their own bugs to feed their fish. And so they showed this chest, this outdoor wood chest with rotten apples in it. And the apples bring these bugs, these worms, and those are what are fed to the fish. Okay, so these maggots just show up. Well, the director said to Franco, "Listen, let's get a shot of you eating one of those bugs." Now, those bugs were not raised to be eaten. Those bugs were for the fish to eat.
Right.
So Franco says no. And the director says, I'll tell you what, you do it, I'll do it. Let's get a video of this. So Franco was conned into eating one of these bugs, and his daughter's like, "Oh, Daddy, that's disgusting." And that's what's caught on the promotional video for this particular segment. This girl saying, "Oh, Daddy, that's disgusting," as Franco eats this bug, or this maggot. Well, he was sick, vomiting for 3 days, just like you're talking about. He didn't die, but he was really, really sick. And as soon as he ate it, he picked the smallest one. He said it was disgusting, turned to the producer and said, "Your turn." And the producer said, "No way." So what I'm saying is that nonsense that they showed on Doomsday Preppers, a lot of it was just that nonsense.
Yeah.
So people do things that are really, really, really dumb. Now, Franco knew better, but he did it anyway. Yeah. So I'm glad he's still alive, but he's pretty furious that he was conned into doing it. Did he have to do it?
Well, he wasn't conned. I mean, he he had the choice to say yes or no. I mean, he should have called out the nonsense, the stupidity of the request for him to do something so stupid. Yeah. You know, I look at Americans these days, and in my field, I see so many risk takers, people doing stupid things. I think Americans, basically, they're big risk takers. Everything they do, speeding, no seat belts, motorcycles riding around with no helmet, engorging themselves at buffet here, and they're all obese, high cholesterol, hypertension, gambling. I mean, gambling away their savings, have nothing to rely on. There are people that are addicted to that. The drugs, the risky behavior, the tattoos, the piercings, unprotected sex, the stupid YouTube videos where people do insane, stupid things. I mean, I don't know, Vince. It's a bizarre time. The population is getting dumber.
Right. I totally agree with that. The population is getting dumber. And Dr. Norman Shealy says that just by the fluoride introduction into our diet through toothpaste and through city water, we have lowered our IQ by 5 points. So for some people, that's huge. That's the difference between being continent and incontinent.
Yep. Agree. Totally agree. I don't know. These are bizarre times. I'm not saying they're interesting times. These are very bizarre times, what we're seeing today. Very bizarre.
The flip-flop thing just drives me crazy. I mean, it really, really bothers me. I see people in the supermarket walking around with flip-flops. And I look at the floor, and I look at, what do people have on the bottoms of their shoes, their sneakers, when they go into these stores? Then you see other people barefoot. Yeah. Can't you get worms by walking around barefoot? Isn't that possible?
Yeah, you actually can. Yeah, you can.
And that's why I wear shoes and sneakers and boots, because I don't want to get worms.
Right.
But these people, do you think it's that they're just ignorant and they don't know, or do you think they're just careless, or is it both?
I think it's laziness and ignorance, and pretty much both those going hand in hand. They're just lazy, and they're ignorant, and they're risk takers. They don't care. The probability is low to them, and really what it actually is not. It actually is much higher than they think. But they're just very lazy people. They're people who take shortcuts on everything.
Very interesting you use that word, shortcuts. I mentioned, I believe, one time on the air that back in the 70s, I was interviewing for my first real after university job. And I read the Wall Street Journal, and there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about dressing for success. And it was short and sweet. And what it said was, men shouldn't be wearing all kinds of jewelry, ID bracelets, bangles, hoops, rings, no earrings for men, simple white shirt, long sleeve, button-down collar, tie shoes, meaning laces, a belt that matches the shoes. So if it's black pair of shoes, black belt, brown pair of shoes, brown belt, not, black and brown mixed, those kinds of things. And the tie shoe thing came to my attention very, very quickly. And the article said that, when people wear slip-ons, they're lazy. And if they're lazy, a careful employer would see that and say, you know what, this guy's lazy. We have no place for a lazy person in our organization. We'll be right back. Class, Steve Elkins and I both have professions. As you know, I'm a farmer, and Steve is a nurse, and he's an ER nurse and an ICU nurse. And when he's not doing that, he's doing his jazz show on the weekends, and he also broadcasts on republicbroadcasting.org. That's republicbroadcasting.org. And his broadcast is on Sunday from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time on Sunday, republicbroadcasting.org. And it's called Off the Beaten Path with Steve Elkins. Steve, you have some very interesting things to say about medicine, and we've been talking about risky behavior. And, the flip-flops, I cannot overemphasize how risky a behavior I think flip-flops is. I see people in the stores, in the supermarkets. Now, not only are they risking getting worms and things like that, but they had to get to that supermarket somehow. Most often, they don't walk there. They get in their car and they drive there, which means that they have these things on their feet that are held on by the tension between their toes, two toes that hold these things on. And in a panic situation, when you have to slam on the brakes, these people are entrusting that footwear to actually stay on their foot while they transition from the accelerator to the brake quickly. And I don't think it's a good idea. And it bothers me. And I don't want to be around anybody like that when they are in their vehicle near me. And I really mean that.
Mm-hmm. I would assume, I'm sure there's probably somebody who's done the test, but there's a delay reaction time of actually, because of the structure itself, what's on your foot, it inhibits you to actually get to your pedal or brake fast enough, because it's actually not firm. It's kind of floating on your heel, you know. Like I said, you have tension between two toes that's keeping you on your foot, so there's probably a delay definitely getting to that brake to brake in time. But let me go back to what I said about shortcuts. And people say, well, shortcuts, that's a good thing. Well, not necessarily. There is a belief that a shortcut is the path of least resistance, and what I often find is that the path of least resistance, these shortcuts actually add more resistance and more problems for you in the future. You actually add more problems to the situation here. So these shortcuts are not a good thing, and Americans, they're lazy. I don't know, it's not time constrained. They got plenty of time for nonsense and watching their ball games and whatever they're doing, but they don't prioritize very well. And I'm caught on time. I've got to hurry. I need to get this done, and so let's do a shortcut to get from point A to point B.
Absolutely correct. And there's something on your in your list. I actually wrote down your list of minus 10 on the IQ point scale. Something that I was thinking of the last couple of days. When I see people wearing these ball team shirts, and they'll spend, $80, $100 for the shirt with some character on there, whether it be a chicken or a bear or a cardinal, whatever it is. I subtract 10 from whatever I thought their IQ was. I drop it by 10 points just by seeing that. And back to the flip-flops, I can't imagine race car drivers, Emerson Fittipaldi, Colin Chapman, Mario Andretti, sitting around in a restaurant talking about what flip-flops they like the best while they're racing.
That's good. I like that one.
Well, I really can't. And I've got to tell you, as a farmer, there's absolutely, positively I don't even own flip-flops. Yeah, I don't think I ever really have. Nobody in our family does. And the reason is no one's going to get on a tractor in flip-flops. Nobody. No. Nobody's going to work on heavy machinery with flip-flops.
Right.
No, it doesn't suit our lifestyle. Yeah. But back to the article in the Wall Street Journal, shoelaces. And what they were saying is that if someone doesn't have enough energy, desire to tie their shoes, if they can't do that, they're lazy. If they're lazy, they don't belong in the company. Exactly. And the same is, button-down shirt collars. My shirt collars are buttoned down. My shoes are tie laces. I don't have slip-on sneakers. They even have sneakers that look like they have laces, but they're not laces. They're just for decoration. You slip them on. The laces do nothing. You can't tie the laces either. We'll be right back. Stephen Elkins is with us. Kyle in Montana is joining us. Kyle, I want to tell you, I was on the phone with a couple instructors yesterday, and your name came up twice. And in the context of, there are a few people I really absolutely trust, and I mentioned that if Kyle or Sharon in Montana ever had the need to come on over here, they are certainly welcome. And I said, I actually believe that even though I've never met Sharon, I've never met Kyle, I believe that if I had an emergency and I showed up and I said, hey, I'm Vince Finelli, I'd be welcome there. And that's what I mentioned, kind words about you and your wife. And I want to thank your wife for the card she sent me. So
you're very welcome, Vince. And Steve, I like your train of thought. I've been as you guys were talking about IQ and different things. I had a little thought there that I think it's different than what the IQ that you're referring to is different than what is measured IQ anymore. Excuse me. I would almost have to call it a common sense IQ.
Yeah.
Because I've known a bunch of these people that wear flip-flops, young guys that have 140, 150 IQs, even some older guys, same kind of thing. Flip-flops everywhere, shorts, there's no real common sense to it anymore. It's like, Vince, I'm reminded again many times when I listen to you and listen to the things that people have done to that quote that I've mentioned one other time. I think that my dad said, the further we get from an agrarian society, the crazier people become. And I also was considering something else. There's a quote from Thomas Jefferson that says, timid men prefer the calm of despotism to the tempestuous sea of liberty. And I think the timidness of men nowadays and the feminization of men, even though these guys might be hunters or fishermen or whatever kind of stuff, that are good shots, excellent long range shots and stuff like that. Different things. There's a difference with them from a societal point of view that has made them less of a man than their grandparents in most cases. And I think that we don't even recognize it because we're all in this same septic tank, and so all we're really seeing is the stuff that's flushed down the toilet that we're all in, and so it starts changing a perspective of people. And I think it has changed the entire perspective of our society.
Steve, your thoughts?
I agree 100%. There is definitely a campaign to feminize young man. Matter of fact, I've noticed it on TV, mainstream media. Many different sportscasters all wearing pink shirts, pink ties, and it's not breast cancer awareness day or anything like that. It's simply there's a feminization going on. The young kids these days, high school boys coming off the school bus, I've noticed. Their hips are very narrow. Their hands look like women's hands. Very little facial hair. There is definitely something going on hormonal, a lack of testosterone in this country, and more estrogen that's been boosted. And I had a theory on that. It could be chemical, could be some of the things in our water. It could be chemtrails, part of that. It could be the vaccines that are actually interrupting the hormonal cycle here of testosterone, and lowering that and increasing estrogens possible during the puberty years. But there actually is a campaign, and we're supposed to now. We're being told that we need to get in touch with our feelings and encouraged to cry and be more feminine. And this is all normal now. This is the new norm. I don't accept that new norm. My grandfather, if he were alive today, he would say, "My God, what has happened to the man?" Which is interesting that the caller has brought up, is that I mentioned this website to you, Vincent. I'm not sure if you've spoken about it yet, but there's an actual website on there that's dedicated to being more manly. It's called theartofmanliness.com. It's a great website. Talks about many, many things that Vince talks about. It talks about being a man and continue on with manly practices and being prepared for life. And, it's a man's website. And we are finding that this millennial, especially the millennials, that are just very well, they don't have any skill set. They have very little skill set of taking care of their needs. They can't do anything on their own. They call on, if they have a flat tire on the side of the road, but they don't know how to change a tire. What they do is hit auto service or 911 and emergency, and I need a tow service to come in here and change my tire. They don't have the correct skills. Females also, they can't cook. They can't sew a button on a shirt. There are a lot of skills that they just don't have anymore, and that I can blame the parents. I can blame schools also for getting rid of some of these programs. I loved shop class. I mean, we all grew up having a shop class. I learned how to build. I learned how to fix. I learned how to repair. And these are all skills that have escaped this generation of kids.
Kyle, your comments?
Boy, I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's the one thing I decided when we had our children that I was going to never allow because they were all homeschooled. The boys and the girls both grew up being around engines, knowing how to change their oil, change a tire, know where all the specific dipsticks were at, how to check, when to check your radiator, not when it's hot, that kind of stuff. It's, those kind of things you learn on a farm, and you can learn these things in the city. I ain't saying it ain't totally impossible to learn, but I say that it makes it a lot harder when you're away from a natural type of a lifestyle where you actually grow up. Our kids grew up with us butchering chickens and butchering hogs and milking goats and making butter and making, drinking the raw milk. And those kind of things were just, they're those kind of skills you only absorb and are imparted to you by having to live some of them, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Steve talked about shop class, and I was looking for a band saw. So I found on Craigslist a band saw. It was $225. It was used. It was a Rockwell brand, top of the line, and it came out of a shop class because the school system, the high school, in its infinite wisdom, decided they didn't need to teach shop anymore. So this thing had the sign on the side that said, caution, wear goggles, those kinds of things, safety first. It had the high school sign on there. It was in fantastic shape, hardly ever used, probably 40 to 50 years old, cast iron. They don't make them like this anymore. This was a U.S. manufactured bandsaw, 14-inch throat. Absolutely phenomenal at $225 delivered. And that's with probably 10 to 20 extra saw bands. I mean, wow. And those things are probably $50 a piece.
Crazy. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we have allowed the school systems to take the education that children need out of the curriculum, which is nuts, which is why, class, if you have a child in school, you need to run for school board office. You need to run for being a director, and you need to fire people because you'll be in charge. You need to fire people who are not doing their jobs. You need to bring back the education that has been taken out that your children need. And shop class is one of those classes. And shop class is not just for guys. I'm talking about welding. I'm talking about wood fabrication, metal fabrication, joinery. I'm talking about all of it. And that's what everyone needs to know because, heck, in Europe right now, in England, guys don't know how to hang a picture on a wall, and I'm not exaggerating. They don't know how to do it.
Vincent, you and I grew up at the same time. We had the same classes. I had all those classes: wood, lathing, everything, welding. I took welding, and it wasn't because I decided thought about becoming a welder in my future life here, but I just wanted to know how to do some things, and I find a personal satisfaction when I can fix something, I can build something. There's a great satisfaction of knowing I can do it on my own. I didn't have to pay anybody. And, the question is, how did these classes that were so important in our life when we were growing up, how did they just decide you don't need to know that anymore. You don't need to know that anymore. Girls don't need to know how to cook. They don't know how to need to know how to do this or sew, or they get rid of all these classes. And the question is, how did that happen? Who made the decision to say that's not important? Teaching life skills isn't important anymore. And then if it's not reinforced by a family, by parents or a mother or a father, those skills are lost forever. And now we have a whole generation walking around who can't do anything anymore. Oh, they can play great video games. That's really important. That's going to save you. But they don't have the skill set to go out on their own anymore. And, they're going to end up living in mom and dad's basement forever. It's pretty sad. Pretty sad.
I'll give you a concrete example. I'd love to hear Kyle's thoughts on this. Kyle probably heard this story. By the way, Steve, Kyle is a USA Preparedness instructor. He's an electrician. He knows a lot about a lot. He is just like us. I mean, he is a wonderful, wonderful person. Even though I haven't met him, I know this for a fact. I've talked on air, off air with him for years. And anyway, when I lived in Virginia, I thought that the educational system was lacking. And we had a computer company, and I gave the company, Mrs. Finelli and I gave our computer company to the school system. And I taught the students who wanted to take this elective class how to build computers, how to manufacture computers, how to service them. And we built a business within the school system. We sold $1,200,000 worth of computers out of my classroom. Okay. The first year. It was a big thing. A U.S. congressman heard about it and decided he wanted to come see this class with his own eyes. My class was selected to represent the Commonwealth of Virginia's Department of Education at the state fair for 13 days. Or 11 days. It was one of those anyway. Because it was so revolutionary. Well, when I finally left the school system, one of the teachers who was with me, I had two teachers working with me, or for me, okay? They took direction from me. Well, they were in charge after I left. And when I left, the whole thing fell apart. And what they replaced it with something that was really important. They replaced it with teaching Microsoft Office. That was computer technology after I left. Why? Because the teachers were lazy. Exactly what you said. Kyle, I'd love to hear your comments if you can stay on through the break. Steve Elkins is with us. Kyle in Montana is with us. I mentioned that I believe that the reason my class fell apart after I left was because the teachers were lazy. Kyle, your thoughts on that?
Well, Vince, I think I agree with you that it is lazy, but also think about it. You're a risk taker in that sense. You were willing to work at building a class, taking a chance on building a class and a business within the school. It goes back to that timidity quote that I was talking about that Thomas Jefferson said. It takes work to be free, and you were willing to take that chance and risk in a sense. And I'm not talking about stupid risk. It was calculated. It was wise. It was very thought out. And it was for the benefit of someone else, those children, those kids that benefited from your initiative. And I think, going back a little tiny bit here, I think it all has to come down to the agenda to hit this gender-neutral environment so that this nation cannot stand on its own 2 feet. And I believe we are already there. I really do. I don't think that the country itself can stand with this group of millennials and the X generation and whatever else they're calling themselves now can stand under the weight of their stupidity and lack of initiative and wisdom and common sense. I don't think any nation can. I mean, you even go back to Rome. Rome eventually got to the point where they were hiring mercenaries to fight their wars, constantly. And they were weak. They become decadent. They become a bunch of homosexuals that were running the government. And it went right back to this opulence and lack male, female things, like I'm going to step on some toes here probably, but whatever happened to men being men, jumping into shop class? And I ain't saying girls can't learn some of this stuff too, but that's not their position. That's not their role. What's wrong with a man taking the role of this stuff? You see men on TV and stuff now. Oh, I'll cook, honey. I can make a really great dinner for you. And while the woman is the worker, you know what I mean? How sick is that?
Yeah. Hey, can I respond to that, Vincent?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Please do. Please do.
I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to respond to that because you're right on target there. How I take this, Vincent, that they kind of let this thing go is I do believe you were too influential. You threatened their power by using knowledge, and you got to remember they're in their sandbox there. So I think they probably were just a little too influential. It threatened their power. And by using knowledge, and you were telling these kids to look outside the box, to use some critical thinking skills. You were trying to encourage them to come up with solutions, and that's not part of the indoctrination process. The indoctrination process is what we have going on in our schools today, and you were challenging that, and I think they found that very threatening. And as Kyle was talking about, you're right. They're not teaching masculinity anymore. That's actually a liability now. Masculinity is a liability. You're supposed to show your female, your emotional female side. I just look at scouting, how they've come after scouting and dumbed that down. Now a girl can join, and it's ridiculous. They're just trying to make everybody equals, and we're not equals. And we need to understand that we are not equals. We're all different. We all have different skill sets, and I'm not the same as a female, and she's not the same as me. We both have different skill sets. We both have different things we can add to better this world. But they want to generalize it that we're all equal. Everybody's the same, and we're not the same at all.
Interesting you say that. I was hauled into the school board office at a school board meeting, and I was going to be beaten up while I was teaching this class. And they said it was a formal thing. It was almost like I was going to be hung. And they said, Mr. Finelli, we've been getting some complaints from the other teachers that we have some computers that aren't working in the school system. Now, there was 5 school buildings in the county, and I was responsible for keeping all of those running. We've been getting complaints that you haven't been able to keep these computers running. And I said, oh, well, how many are we talking about? And they said, there's 7 computers that are not working in the county. And I said, so let's say we're in the taxi business, and we've got a fleet of 1,100 taxi cabs. Do you think it's reasonable that 7 of them might be on the side of the road from an engine failure, transmission failure, a flat tire, or a collision? Do you think that's possible? Is that reasonable?
Very reasonable, yeah.
They backed right down. They backed right down because we had 1,100 computers. Kyle, hey, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Kyle.
Give my best to your wife, a lovely, lovely person, Sharon. Thank you so much. Stephen, I'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Steve Elkins is with us. He's an ICU nurse, an ER nurse, broadcaster on Republic Broadcasting. He does a jazz show on a radio station in his neck of the woods in Florida. And we're talking about risky behavior. So, Steve, what I see is risky behavior has infiltrated our lives, even though we don't like it, approve it, condone it. We don't want anything to do with it, but it's entered our lives. Let me just give you an example. So if I just pull up to any place that cuts hair, not a barber shop, but, where they have women, and they do women's hair and men's hair, chances are that the gal, and it's usually a gal, who is cutting the hair has tattoos. So she's involved in risky behavior, or has been, and she's got pointy scissors right at my neck. If I go to a restaurant, odds are that the people in the kitchen who are cooking have tattoos. Odds are that the waiter or waitress has tattoos. If I go to have my car worked on, the mechanic has tattoos. Pretty much wherever I go, even in dental offices, the gals who are hygienists oftentimes have tattoos. Nurses have tattoos. I don't know about doctors. I can't believe it. Are you seeing the same thing in your profession where nurses have tattoos
actually,
as well?
I actually am. Not overly done, but it's a fad. Americans love fads. They love fads, and it's here today and gone tomorrow. But the problem is a tattoo and a lot of these piercings, and especially those ones where you stretch your earlobe. I love that one. It's like, oh my God, it's the size of a quarter. But these fads will come and go, but the permanent markings are on your body for life. And then, of course, you've created a new commerce right there for laser removal to get rid of this disfiguration as you get older and older. These tattoos are going to look nasty. And then we have a whole new business now created, commerce, to basically get rid of the damage you caused, your self-mutilation. It's pretty sad, yes. And I look at a lot of these people as not only are they overweight, obese, but with the tattoos and the piercings, looking like human cattle, kind of like cattle. We brand cattle, and now we have humans walking around that look like cattle, the size of cattle, and now they have the piercings and the tattoos, which is the branding mark. Pretty amazing.
You know, it's interesting you say that because what I actually do for a living is I'm a cattle farmer. And not one of our cows is branded. And I've told our children, I've told them all very clearly, and they know I'm not kidding, that if they get a tattoo, they are out of the will. They're out of the will.
Good for you. Good for you.
And I'm serious. I'm serious. And I also told them if they find out that they're queer and they decide that they want to be gay, they're not welcome home anymore either. And,
yeah, I heard that as a kid growing up,
people
too.
Said to
I heard
me,
the same.
Well, and I mean it. I mean it. That if one of our children or all of them decide that they're queer and they want to be homos, they are not welcome home. They are, and I really mean it. And people said to me, so you would not love your children? And I go, that's right. That's right. I would not love our children if they became homos.
I heard the same thing growing up, Vincent.
It's a perversion.
Well, not only that, is that every father's dream is their son to grow up and have offspring and keep the family name going. That can't possibly happen in a homosexual relationship. It's not possible without somebody donating the egg. So, the family line, the family name, the man's honor dies if his son can't reproduce and keep the family name going. So that was a big part of it in my household. Other than the shame of it and the filth of it, no, not in our house.
What happens in the medical profession? What are you seeing any impact from the homosexuality? Is there a proliferation of disease? What is the impact of homosexuality, or is it just a bunch of queers that want to make sure that everybody knows they're queer?
Well, the movement is very strong, and I actually predicted this long ago. I predicted it. My wife and I were watching, and I remember when Ellen first came on, Ellen DeGeneres. That's interesting. Her last name stemming from the word degenerate, that she is a degenerate. But she's very popular, and when she left the airways, when she came out as being a lesbian, her career ended. But I said that woman's going to be back in less than 10 years and stronger than ever, and this movement is going to take off. They are very unified. They are very together on the same issue of creating and promoting homosexual lifestyle. It is a new norm, as they want to say. This is the way it is. It's normal. It's not normal. There's nothing normal about it, and I don't want to go into the biblical portion of it, of how God feels about it, but it is there. And their goal is essentially, my feeling is their goal is essentially to erase religion, erase the Bible, get rid of the Bible, shelve it in the area of fiction, a good read, but not truth, because there's really nothing that there's nothing in the Bible that condones their lifestyle. It is growing. It is growing, and we have a government, whether it's it's Obama or the current president at the time. It's catering, intolerance. And that's actually the first word that actually started this whole problem. And it was used on preachers, and the word is called tolerance. With tolerance comes affirmation. With affirmation comes acceptance. And it started with one little word, be tolerant, be tolerant, be tolerant. Well, they're not tolerant of me. They're not tolerant of my beliefs, but I'm supposed to be tolerant of their beliefs. And if I am tolerant of their beliefs, their agenda grows bigger and bigger.
You were here at the farmhouse with John Statmiller during Christmas, and I told you what my New Year's resolution was going to be.
Right.
And class, do you want to say it, or do you want me to say it?
I've used your phrase. I've given you full credit. Do I owe you any money for that? Because I have used that a couple times.
No, of course not.
If I owe you
class,
a quarter for every time I've used that, you're going to get a nice paycheck in the mail. But no, Vinny said something, and I loved it. I wrote it down. And Vinny is going to increase not his tolerance, but his intolerance. Increase his intolerance. And I agree with that 100%.
And I have. And so I was on the phone with Joey in Michigan, a USA Prepares instructor, yesterday. And Joey I think he's increased his intolerance as well. And what he's now doing is, if he's at a store and someone's got drool coming out of their mouth, they don't know what they're doing, he will dress them down, and tell them that they have no business being there. He'll ask for the store manager and say, see that guy over there? You should be really proud of him. He has no clue what he's doing. He will dress down the store manager. He'll dress down these ignorant people who are acting like they're employees, and they're wearing the smock or the uniform of the store. They have no clue. Or if they speak and spittle comes out of their mouth because they just can't control themselves, he'll dress them down. Like, what's the matter with you? I don't want to be near you. I don't know what diseases you have. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. But I applaud him for doing that. I absolutely do. And more of us need to do that. More of us need to complain.
I agree.
Because it's not normal.
I got a question for you, Vincent. I wish Kyle was still on the line. I'd throw this question to him, too. But I just looking at, I was watching TV the other day. I was watching Wimbledon. It's one of the Grand Slams, one of the four Grand Slams of men's tennis. And I used to be a player, so I enjoy watching the competition. But watching the cameraman going around the crowd, and I've seen this many, many times, and I'm going to ask you the question. I see a grown-up man, probably in his mid to late 30s, wearing a T-shirt, a Batman T-shirt or a Star Wars T-shirt. What is the first thing comes to mind when you see a grown man wearing a T-shirt like that?
It's interesting you mentioned Kyle. I'll tell you why. We did a broadcast with Ron Allen. Ron Allen has a company called The Big Voice. And Ron Allen is the announcer for USA Prepares. He's the guy that says, no, Vincent Finelli, that guy.
Right.
And the no whining. So he's done all those intros and outros. So he was on the air with me, and we were talking about the anatomy of a commercial. And Kyle called up. And Kyle was livid because he was explaining that he can't stand watching these television shows, commercials, etc., that show the father as being this moron, this idiot, this goofball, kind of like what you're talking about with the costume. Okay, and Ron Allen said the most amazing thing. He said, Kyle, some men identify with that. They say, that's me. I'm that jerk. I'm that jerk in the TV show. I'm that buffoon. Now, that was foreign to me until he said it. And then I thought, wow, he's really hit the nail right on the head. So I'm thinking that these commercials, who would watch these things? How could anybody stand them? How could anybody stand these idiotic TV shows, these stoop-coms, or I guess they call them sitcoms? How can anybody stand them? But the answer is people identify with that. So there are other fathers out there, other adults that say, geez, I guess he got the last Batman costume. I wish I got there first. I don't know how to explain it other than people are just... Right. Here's another one. So there's a public school in Philadelphia. It's called the Joseph Welty Middle School in New Philadelphia, Ohio. And they had a plaque in bronze that was the Ten Commandments. And it was a gift by the class of 1926. So the class of 1926 had this bronze casted, the Ten Commandments, and it was on the school property. Well, these two buffoons that call themselves Freedom from Religion Foundation, they're two activists, a male and female, and a gal by the name of Annie Laurie Gaylor and her husband, Dan Baker. These two activists complained. They took down the plaque because these two sickos thought that, well, here's what they said. They said that school children already feel significant pressure to conform to their peers. They must not be subjected to similar pressure from their schools, especially on religious questions. I can't think of anything wrong with the Ten Commandments.
Nope. I can't either. You know, if they say that we identify or people identify with these shows, I got to laugh because the comedy shows, they always have the fat guy, the fat doofus guy with the pretty wife. I don't know anybody in that situation at all. And I noticed the laugh tracks, especially like on these stupid shows like The Big Bang Theory, which is now off air, thank God, but never watched it. But when I did catch a little bit of it, I think this is so idiotic. And they have these laugh tracks. They put them in there every 3 to 5 seconds. The laugh happens after the quip. It's not even a funny comment, but a laugh track is supposed to say, all right, you trained SEALs, laugh also. It's not funny, but we think it's funny. We want you to laugh. Or if they programmed you right, which is programmed.
About 83 years ago, a mural was painted by a respectable artist. And the mural was painted in a school in San Francisco. And the mural shows George Washington. It shows some American Indians. It shows conflict. It pictures the way it really was. Well, the school board thinks that should come down. Actually, it should be painted over. And the school board, in their infinite wisdom, has allocated $600,000 to paint over this mural. I want you to think about that. $600,000. Because it makes people feel uncomfortable looking at a dead Indian and looking at, muskets and looking at horses and in the time of the Revolutionary War during George Washington's life. So this mural is absolute brilliant art, but yet it's now considered offensive because it shows what really happened, and the students have to walk past it. So $600,000 is now allocated for the project. And so why is it $600,000? I mean, I don't know how much a gallon of paint costs in San Francisco, but it's not $600,000. And the $600,000 is earmarked because it's going to be used for environmental review and to cover the expected legal challenges. The school has only 2,000 students. This is how sick we've become. So we get rid of shop class. We sell off the shop tools. We don't teach the students skills, and we don't want them to be offended by history. And we're willing to waste $600,000 to do that. All of the people in the school board should be removed, every single one. But
that's interesting. It's interesting that the minority, and I know if you actually took a poll of these people, you got a handful of people who are offended by everything, Vincent. Everything offends them. They just find offense in everything. So you're going to cater to a small handful of individuals who are offended by this and want to read it a different way. that it's offensive, and so you're willing to tear down something. You tear down history because of a handful of people, so you'll make 3 people happy by tearing it down, and everybody else, hundreds of other people, even thousands in this situation, would say, I don't have a problem with this. So you're catering to the minority, and they're offensive. It's offensive to them. I say to these people, being offended builds character, and they're in short supply of it. It's a good thing to be offended. We're always going to find offense in something, and it builds character, so they need to thicken their skin a little bit and stand up, be a man.
Yes, class, be a man. And when I go on stage for the Laclede annual meeting, where the board of directors tries to convince the voters that they need to be re-elected. One guy's been on the board for, I believe it's either 47 or 48 years. I'm not kidding about that. So I'm going to challenge the men to stand up and fight for reduced electric bills. But, the police will be there to haul me away. They'll have their lawyer there. I'm only allowed 2 minutes to speak. I wanted to read something to you. I'm trying to find it. But we have detractors. At least one detractor absolutely can't stand us. He listens every day. Every day this guy listens to us, and every day he has to beat us up and lie. And this is an example of one person having his, he's got a voice, and he has to tear us down. And I don't know why people are like that. It's really sick. But if I can find it, I'll read it. Steve, when we come back, where would you like to go? Would you like to talk about floating poop?
We can, if you want to, yeah.
No, let's talk about floating poop. No kidding. You need to know this, class. We'll be right back. Steve Elkins is with us. Steve, I want to read a quote. This is from a person purporting to have the name Tony Long. And you can only see this on some browsers. I found out that I was in the studio looking for this comment on a YouTube video on the Ron Gibson channel. I couldn't find it in the studio, so I went in to use the computer in the kitchen, and it came right up. So what I'm finding is different results show up on YouTube on different browsers. So here is the quote. Here's what a guy says about USA Prepares, specifically about me. He claims his name is Tony Long. It's not. Quote, USAcomplains.com with the frog-mouthed baboon, Vincent Finelli, a.k.a. Sitting Bull, a man of weak character as he talks big, hiding behind the microphone about confronting those corporations who push defective products on the little people. But he himself has never lifted a finger to confront anything or anybody, and if he has stated so, it has all been lies. Just like the 303 oil deception, he doesn't talk much about it because he knows his students have figured out the situation as he, the tight blanked, tried to save money instead of purchasing OEM quality products. Only a pea brain would use low-quality oil and expensive equipment. He won't admit failure because his motto, honesty and integrity, is not convenient for his double-standard lifestyle. How could anybody with half a brain take advice from this idiot who drives a Chevrolet, shove it or leave it, and then talks about breakdowns on the air? What a shade tree parts swapper. Then there's the broken record, Shlomo Schliesman, and his skin pigmentation BS. Vinny, please give this guy walking papers. Vinny, take another swig of your misery moonshine and go back to sleep. That's what the minority says about us.
Well, how I interpret that, Vincent. You're over the target.
I'd love to hear.
You're over the target. And they know it. And they don't like what you're saying.
Well, I would defend his right to free speech. I don't like this guy. I think he is just an example of what's wrong with America today. What he's doing is he's using his words to try to convince people not to pay attention to us, saying that we lie, we don't know what we're talking about. It's all nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Well, there's no substance. There's no substance to his rant, Vincent. There's no substance to his rant. It was a rant, and there was nothing to back up why. Why are you insincere, and why what you're teaching is wrong? He can't back that up.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I've invited all of these people to come on the air and call in, but you know what? They won't do it.
Cowards.
They won't do it. They are cowards. They are cowards. Now, I got to tell you, I'll eviscerate him on the air. I'll require that he uses his real name, because I use my real name.
Sure.
So he can use his real name. He can give out his phone number, his contact information, and let's discuss it on the air. But I'll shred him right on the air. I will. But he won't do it because he's a coward.
Yep.
And that's the problem. Like the cowards who want to remove their mural in San Francisco, or the cowards who want to remove, or did remove, the Ten Commandments. Really? The Ten Commandments are offensive?
Yeah.
This is beyond insanity. So let's talk about poop. Since we're already talking about poop, let's talk about,
let's do it.
And this guy. What's the story on floating poop or sinking poop?
Well, it's an indicator of your diet. It tells you how much fat is in your diet. We know Americans have terrible diets. A lot of people have. I won't generalize and say everybody, but McDonald's is in business, Burger King's in business, KFC's in business, Taco Bell's in business, all doing great record number sales. And so somebody's eating all this crappy food, this high-fat diet food, and it actually is it's killing us. It's killing us slowly. It's bringing on a lot of disease, a lot of problems, and nobody really addresses that. When's the last time you saw a public service announcement, a PSA from the government saying the ingestion of all this fat food is causing health problems? When's the last time you saw that? Probably never have. But when it comes down to the floating poo, like I said, it indicates your fat content of your diet. As we know, if you drop droplets of oil on the water, the oil will bead up and it'll float on top. And a high-fat diet will show up in your toilet as your poo will float. It will not sink to the bottom. And there's a lot of floaters out there. There's a lot of people that have floating poo because of their poor choices in diet. They are actually killing themselves very slowly, looking at diverticulitis and a number of other problems, digestion problems, because of the fat content they take in.
I was traveling and stopped at one of those gas stations that had a McDonald's associated with it. And I walked through the door to wash up after I used diesel fuel, and you always get diesel on your hands when you pump diesel. So I was washing the diesel off, and I went through the McDonald's there, and there was this chubby young girl there, and she had the uniform on for McDonald's, and she smiled and welcome to McDonald's. And I said, well, thank you. I said, so do you eat here? Oh, yes. How's the food? Oh, it's great. And there was an older guy there, and he was watching me talk to this young gal, and he knew what I was saying. I was saying, lady, you are wearing those hamburgers, and they're sticking to you, and you are chubby and overweight. Why don't you pay attention? So, class, if you think I'm kidding, just go look at the employees who are seasoned employees who work at McDonald's. Why? Because they get a free meal or a half-price meal. So they eat there. And if you want to see what McDonald's food does, after a year, just look at the employees. They're all huge.
Yeah.
They're all huge.
Yeah, and on top of that, they're not exercising at all. So, yeah, it just kind of sticks. And we had a fat population. It's interesting. They had a war on soda pop, but they didn't have a war on the fat food aisle there, the chip aisle. Just on soda pop, you kind of touched only on part of the problem with diets. This is a fat nation. This is a really fat nation. It's getting bigger and bigger.
How about, in the ER as an ER nurse or ICU, I was thinking about Independence Day. And I got to tell you, I really don't like the idea of fireworks. As a farmer, I know that our animals are terrified of these nonstop explosions on Independence Day. Yeah. So these skyrockets go up and debris comes down. The birds think the debris is food. The small animals think the debris is food. They're eating toxic heavy metals. And why? Because the GDP is so ignorant that they have to light this stuff up. They set fires. They hurt themselves. So let's just talk about the thing that really, really, really bothers me is when these young parents have these birthday parties for these young children and they stick sparklers on the cake. So now they have these heavy metals, metal debris, metal flakes falling down on the birthday cake. How stupid can people be to do that? But they do.
Yep.
And, right? You've seen it.
Yeah.
We've all seen it.
Yep.
And then the other thing they do is they give these young people who, I'm talking 4 and 5-year-olds, here, hold this while daddy lights it. And they light the sparklers. They burn it between 12 and 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. It can cause enormous injuries. People have been burned in the face, burned in the hands, burned on their feet. Why? Because they're wearing flip-flops.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, okay, have you seen it in the ER or ICU, the results of this?
I haven't seen a sparkler injury in a long time. Back in the day, every once in a while you saw those old metal sparklers, they were glowing red hot. They don't actually make those anymore. But every once in a while you'd see somebody who stepped on one and burnt their foot or something like that. And I haven't seen any of those. What I have seen are the firecrackers, the M80s blowing off a finger here and there, and bottle rockets to the face. I've seen those. It's quite interesting. When's the last time you heard any of these people that are so worried about our ecology and our atmosphere here and our air quality? When's the last time you heard somebody complain about all the pollution that's generated from all these fireworks? And the noise ordinances are obviously broken with this. And they say, well, it's only once a year, and we're celebrating the birth of our nation. Like I said, I don't celebrate it. I don't feel like a free man at all because I remember some freedoms I used to have and they no longer exist anymore. So I'm not celebrating, not wasting my time with it. But there's a lot of commerce to be made on this. I don't know what the fireworks industry creates, probably billions of dollars, I assume. Just like Halloween, the candy industry, they create billions of dollars for their own needs. But my animals also hate this. They are very terrified, and I actually have to give them a little sedation medicine for the next couple of days just to calm them down because they don't like loud booms. And I can imagine. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Vincent, because when I was in the military, working on a C-5 Galaxy in Altus, Oklahoma, there was a huge stockyard of 5,000 head of cattle across the runway. Big farmer had a big cattle farmer over there, and 5,000 head of cattle. And the United States military had to pay this cattle farmer X number of dollars because of the roaring engines that our airplanes created over their zone, their feeding ground and everything, and that it affected the beef. It affected the cow's growth. So we know loud noises are not good for animals, and it definitely this farmer profited huge from the military being there, from our KC-135s, our C-5s, and our 141s flying right over his ranch there, and his cattle. He made a good case, and the people said, "Yeah, I guess you're right. It does stun their growth. It's not a good thing."
I was outside yesterday, and our dogs ran over. The garage doors were closed, and I was outside working right outside the garage doors, and our dogs ran over to me, sat down, and begged me to let them in the garage. They were terrified of the explosions going off.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't
and
know
they
what
know
is it
about
with
explosions.
I'm not sure what it is with rednecks and fireworks and blowing up stuff. It just seems to be every year. I always dread this time of the year, saying, "Oh, the rednecks are going to be out again and blowing stuff up," and well, it's just accepted, I guess. I mean, who am I going to complain to, and how serious they're going to take me? Well, they're going to say, "Well, it's a celebration. They have the right to do that." And I don't know. Like I said, the people who are worried about the environment and the pollution, I have never heard anybody step up and say, "You know how much pollution you are generating?" And you talk about air quality, my car, my automobile, and you're worried about that, but you don't care about this.
Right. And the car is a necessity, and fireworks is frivolous. We'll be right back. Steve Elkins is with us. Gene in Kentucky, welcome.
Hello, y'all. Some of you RBN hosts and GCN hosts kind of disagree a little bit with what y'all are saying about the obesity and the causes of heart disease. Dr. Joe Wallach says that it's because of the oils that we use, that they turn rancid, it causes inflammation. And he said it doesn't matter if you never exercise, they were also missing a bunch of essential nutrients that's no longer in the soil and in our diet. And my cholesterol is like 200 and something. There's no way I'm going to do anything about it. Mine shows 231, and they highlighted it. I couldn't care less. I just want to eat the good stuff. But they recommend you eat the collagen parts of the little animals and stuff, and also use the lard that when you cook with, like if you got the good type of animals that you cook that's been pasture raised and all that you save the fat and use real butter. That's what some of the RBN hosts and GCN hosts and sponsors recommend.
Which RBN host are you talking about, huh? Which RBN host would you say?
Daniel? Joe Wallach pushes his products, but he also talks about inflammation, heart disease and all that is caused by inflammation of all these oils that they're using, like canola and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. He don't recommend any oils, really. And Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer, she talks about saving the fat from it, like if you cook ham hocks and all that, not the ones that smoked and all that, and save that and use for cooking. Or just, because I just use mostly water to steam my stuff, a little bit of meat.
Let's hear what Steve. Let's hear what Steve has to say.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with some of that. I think what we're seeing here, though, hasn't recognized or mentioned is these people that do the business of fat, the deep frying.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how often they change that oil, and I assume it's not that often. That oil gets pretty dark, and they're still using. They think it still has more life in it. Of course, you're creating more carcinogens as you keep heating that oil over and over and over again, and they're being cost conscious by using that oil over and over again, where they should be discarding it. But Americans are addicted to the deep fry. I mean, it tastes good. The fat tastes good. It tastes better than no fat, and so that's kind of an addictive thing going on there with the food. It tastes better. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of what's going on for dietary is people just eat a lot of fat food, and they eat a lot of deep-fried stuff.
Yeah. Well,
so I agree with some of what you said.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, if you listen to Joe Wallach, he says that all oils are bad. They all will turn rancid. I mean, because even right away, I don't know, he said something about oxidizing the body. You have to listen to some of his commercials, and when he's on, on the air and stuff, and Jennifer Daniels, She says eat the collagen, the collagen part of it, like the wings, and eat the skin. But she didn't say to fry anything. She was just saying, I think she crock pots a lot of stuff and whatever.
That's good.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But Gina, that's a lack of minerals in that in our diet. That's what Dr. Wallach has been pushing all these years.
Gene, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. And I know Dr. Joel Wallach. He's been to our farm. He's had dinner in our kitchen, so I know him.
I met him when he came to Louisville one time, but a person would have to spend like $200 a month just to get a lot of his products, so that's a lot of money. So there's got to be a way out there, because he talks about he started eating animal pellets and something about mineral blocks or something. So I'll tell you what.
Why don't you tune in on Fridays? Steve is going to be with us frequently on Fridays. We just have to work out the schedule. So
okay.
Hey, thanks so much,
y'all
Gene.
Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye. Steve, here's something that's very disturbing. So there is this new phenomenon that these crazies are going into food stores and they are licking products with their tongues, and they're putting it back. They are going into the fruit departments, produce area, grabbing fruit, licking it, putting it back. Licking a donut, putting it back in the box. Licking ice cream, putting the lid back on. This is the kind of stuff that's going on right now. What do you think we should do about protecting ourselves from this insanity?
Well, it sounds like we created another area of commerce here. They could put protective seals on all that stuff. The ice cream, you have to pull it back. And if you buy ice cream, I guess you would pull it back and see, hey, the seal's been broken. I can't touch this. If this is, I haven't heard this. This is a new story for me. But I would assume that if this starts to become an issue here, I mean, we have surveillance. They're using all kinds of high-tech surveillance, and they simply watch this for this stuff. And then you have to make an extreme example of anybody caught doing this. You just have to be very harsh, and the judicial system has to come down very hard on these people, and then usually the practice stops.
I walked into a Walmart, and in the back there they had a Subway, a sub sandwich shop inside the Walmart, and there was no customers at the time, and the two gals who were sandwich makers were sitting on the food preparation stainless steel shelf or countertop.
Yeah.
They were sitting there with their butts on the area that the next customer would enjoy having his sub made on. I called the manager and I said, you got to see this.
Yeah.
Manager came over, furious with these. There's no more, by the way, Subway is no longer in that area of the store anymore. They are not inside the store. They are separate. Now, they're a walled-in area to distinguish that Subway is not part of Walmart. Steve, thanks so much for being with us. I'm looking forward to doing it again and again and again.